Hi, this is Supriya reporting for the SoftCopy from the Bangalore Literature Festival. I am in conversation with John Elliott, who is here to attend the session on India. Is it a crouching tiger or a gasping elephant? John Elliott is a former Financial Times journalist whose best-selling book Implosion, India's Tryst with Reality was published this year by HarperCollins India. Based in New Delhi, he writes about South Asia current affairs. Hello John, how did you enter the field of journalism?
Oh, I've got a very curious start. I was working in the construction industry as a trainee manager and got bored with it and started writing. I joined an architectural and building magazine and wrote about architecture and building. I mean, you won't find anybody, well, you will have a few people who've done this, but not many. And I worked on a couple of technical magazines writing about 40 years ago. 40 years ago. In order to get to Fleet Street, which is the national newspapers, you had to work for, I think it was 3 or 5, I forget, years in the provinces, in the cities outside. The National Union of Journalists had a closed shop and blocked young journalists coming into Fleet Street, unless they'd done an apprenticeship, if you like, in outside London. I bypassed that by doing it on technical magazines. And the only exceptions was that the Financial Times and 1 or 2 other papers took some graduates, about 2 a year straight from university. So it's a different, I mean, it's not really usable because it's a peculiar situation in Britain.
How important is it to maintain credibility in the field of journalism?
Obviously essential. Obviously paid news and all sorts of mixing editorial and advertising is bad for the credibility of journalism. If there is any material in a newspaper which looks vaguely like editorial as opposed to looking like advertising, then it should be clearly marked at the top. This is an advertisement or advertorial or whatever you call it, and it should be in a slightly different design so the page looks different from other pages. And paid news is a disaster. And shows the decline of the media, whether increased business ownership of the press by Reliance and other people will make that better or worse is anyone's guess. Thank you very much.
Would you rely on newspapers or online to get yourself updated on the current issues?
I mean, I buy four Indian newspapers, and I read at least one other online. I read Mint online, simply because I don't want too many. I mean, I sometimes look at the Financial Express. Mail Today I'm buying at the moment, but if I don't, I look at it online. British newspapers I read online. The Financial Times that I used to work for many years, I stopped my newspaper subscription a year ago. Okay. Partly because it comes in late. It comes in a day late because it's printed somewhere else. And I read the FT online. I miss the Saturday paper because that's nice to have to hold it, but I'm perfectly happy reading the Financial Times columns and the Financial Times news on India and elsewhere online, and the Guardian newspaper in London I read online.
Okay.
But I liked having newspapers as well. I cut newspapers. I'm still old-fashioned enough to run cuttings, but I'm perfectly happy to read online. I think the answer you really need is I'm perfectly happy to read online. I've given you examples how I do. I'm perfectly happy to read online providing I know that those sources are reliable.
Okay.
And obviously the Guardian newspaper or the Financial Times is going to be as reliable online as it is in the printed version the next morning. And Mint is the same newspaper. I mean, the Financial Times will change because I'm reading it while they're writing the stories and they won't have printed the actual newspaper because of the time difference. And the Washington Post that I also get, even more so. But you can't read anything and believe it.
So how?
So First Post and Scroll In, so these two things I think have to prove themselves when they start as being as reliable as if they were printed on paper. And I think those two examples, both First Post, even though it's owned by TV18, so it's now owned by Mukesh Ambani, and Scroll In, I think they both establish reputations as being reliable.
Okay. You constantly write about current affairs of South Asia. So what do you think about Modi's foreign policy?
I think it's good and positive. The idea of seeing the neighbours first, bringing them here for the sorry, a bad cough. Bringing them here for the swearing in, and then visiting Bhutan and Nepal first, and the foreign minister going to Bangladesh was excellent.
The SAARC nations.
The SAARC nations plus Mauritius for the swearing in, and including the Tibet government in exile.
Nowadays, more and more corporate and marketing people are coming in the business of newspapers. For example, Times of India. How do you think is it affecting the quality of news that's coming in?
Curious things. I mean, the Times of India, in my view, is one of the best newspapers in the country. I'm probably in a minority on that. I'm certainly among journalists. But I think when I go away, I'm about to go to London for a week, and I've reduced my newspapers because I can't come back to whole batch to 3. Business Standard, Business Standard, Economic Times, because I want the economic news while I'm away, and the Times of India, and that's the paper that I will rely on because of the breadth of coverage. If you read the Times, certainly in Delhi, I don't know if it applies in Bangalore, but certainly in Delhi, if you read the Times of India, you get the whole spread. If you read the Indian Express, you get more adventure, you get more scoops, you get more breaking stories. But the Times of India has got them all. I think that contradicts what I should say, which is that the editor has to be in charge and shouldn't be mucked about by the publisher or blurred by the publisher or the advertising. And I firmly believe that. And one of the things I've always wanted to do was to go to the Times of India and talk to people and try and sort out why I think what I think when I don't approve of what they're doing.